first time hit record without warning. So good morning, everyone. Today it is the January 26th, and it is our weekly SIG Node. And we need to start with the Sergey also and Alala about the test and PR status.
Have you started? Oh, recording is started. So did you say it's a January 26th? Hi, SIG Node meeting. Yeah, I think we are in this stage of development and version release when there are a bunch of work in progress PRs right now. If you look at created PRs, you can see quite a few of them marked with work in progress or used to be marked with work in progress. So this raise in PR count may be expected. Still, there are few PRs, and we identified a lot of PRs in CI test group that needs to be reviewed and moved forward. They're quite straightforward. So yeah, if you have time, please review PRs. But and I don't feel very bad about this +7 on PR count because just in this stage, like people working on features, so that's great.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say, so yesterday in sort of the second half of the CI meeting, we sort of met and discussed, we have the CI sort of test specific board, and then we have the board, which is everything else. And Sergey's mostly managing the test board, and I'm managing the everything else board. So from that meeting, we came away with like a few actions. So action number 1 was for me to put a little like documenting note at the top of each column on the non-test board to sort of explain what things should go in each column so other people can jump in and participate, and as well to add a sort of more longer form document. So I haven't had a chance to draft that document yet, but that should be coming. And I think the other thing I should mention is that I think we want to maybe move the node meeting, the CI meeting, which is currently on Mondays, because it's kind of at a bad time for some people. So I think Sergey is going to send a doodle.
Yeah, I will. I'm working on doodle now, and let's see whether current time will hold and people happy with that, or we need to reschedule.
Cool. Thanks. I'm looking forward for the new schedule proposal, and also looking forward, Alala, your talk. And I really want to participate of the CI working group. It's just complete the conflict with my time. So, okay, thank you for the updates. Let's move to next topic. The Mala or Akala, so sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name correctly, please correct me. So let's talk about how to move on with your fix with the pod removal.
Yes, hi, so a couple of weeks back, I didn't attend the meeting, so I'm not exactly sure what was discussed in the SIG Node further. I know I was looking into the issue which caused this revert to happen. I looked into the Istio logs and the CI logs, and I saw that it's, so this fix will actually cause the pod delete to be slowed down, which is expected. And that's the reason I even mentioned that in the PR comments that after this fix, you should see a little bit more time, from the time you delete the pod to the time it is actually removed from the API server. Because in the current scenario, in the current world, what's happening is not everything is being cleaned up, and few things are being just left as to the GC to take care. And those things actually include something important like network resources and other stuff. So this PR actually tries to fix that, where it tries to make sure that network resources are also properly cleaned up before the pod is actually removed from the API server. Thereby, if there's any chance of prevent leaks happening, the cluster admins that they would know beforehand, okay, why there are so many pods which are actually asked to be killed, but still not yet fully terminated. Is some network issue happening on some nodes or something? Those kind of issues would be caught straight away itself. So I understand that it was reverted because it's causing some P1 issue in the CS there. So I want to since I was not part of the other SIG Node meeting, I just want to see what was decided on this PR. That way I can try to introduce, look into this code more and fix if whatever is required and create a new PR back. with that fix.
So to give some context on investigation, originally it was proposed once long ago, and it was implemented, but then reverted back once already, as far as I remember, because a delay it introduced for pod shutdown. And then there was a PR that attempted to fix it, and it was fixing it in most cases. So the idea was that when we receive this lifecycle event that pod being removed from, or container being removed from a pod, we will try to clean up a sandbox. And it was working in most cases, but sometimes it was raised, and at this stage, like pod is not ready to be removed, and we failed to remove sandbox and was waiting for GC to pick up the slack. So it was like up to 1 minute to start a deletion process of sandboxes. And then depending on how many sandboxes you have, it may take a while. So like 1 minute extra time of pod cleanup is not acceptable. Many tests will fail, and like it's not super good experience. That's why we reverted it. But I mean, I think it's reasonable to want to clean up all the resources. I don't know why not. I just need to make sure that we clean up it as fast as possible and not waiting for GC to kick in.
Sure. So yes, when the first revert happened, it was mostly the Kubernetes actual ETVs in the release validation tests, which were taking more time. So I was running those things to verify my fix. I think now it's happening with the on the issue side where they use, I think, kind in that network scenario. I can like try to simulate that and see where actually the exact delay is happening and try to fix on that part. Okay, sure. I'll look into that exact ETV, that issue ETV which failed, which caused this thing to be reverted, and I'll try to see where actually happened. Sure. Thanks, Ajay.
Yeah, and I think Ilana mentioned some failures on Cryo as well. That was happening because of that.
Okay, sure.
Yes.
I'll look into that also. Yeah.
I also want to mention that there's the one. Also, there's the E2E test. Make sure the E2E test the pod removal, deletion, and is correct. Those passed. And another thing it is the John from the Istio. They have like the very easy reproducing cases for that issue. So make sure that reproducing cases is covered. At least to me, that's represent somehow that they are trying to integrate. So how they are using. So make sure that also passed. I also want to mention that I just noticed that on the agenda, the Paxel, I don't know, Paxel Xu, and also another, and he also have a proposal like a PR try to fix based on what you proposed, based on that PR and a proposal. But the decision it is not take time because it is we are rushed to release, right? So the decision it is revolt because not try to stop the regression immediately. So that's kind of the action we take at the SIG Node. Just let you know, and maybe you can look at what he tried to fix. I haven't looked at the his PR in detail yet. Just want to mention here.
Sure. Thanks. I look into that. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, just to add slightly more detail on the Cryo side, what we were seeing were end-to-end tests where a lot of pods were created and then rapidly deleted were timing out because pod deletion was taking so much longer.
Sure. Yep. It's the only delay here would be mostly because of the CNI thing. I just want, do you know like what was the CNI being used in that E2E scenario?
Not off the top of my head. We can sync offline.
Sure. Thanks.
It wasn't CNI. It was like CNI wasn't taking too long over time. It was an issue that the logic that attempt to delete a sandbox was called when it's too early to delete the sandbox. And because it's too early, it didn't delete the sandbox and waited for garbage collection. So delay was introduced by garbage collection, not by CNI or any runtime interface.
I'll look into that. Sure. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And address this problem. So let's move to next one. Xin, you now you're the co-host. If you need, you also can share your screen if you need.
Okay, thanks, Tom. I don't think I need to share. I will just talk about this. So we are working on this volume house feature. We're trying to move it to beta. So I have the link there. So one question that comes up during the review of the CAP is that, so for this feature, right, so we have this volume house monitoring agent deployed as a sidecar with a CSI driver on every node. And each agent has a pod informer, and that will, the agent will add an event to the pod if an abnormal volume condition is detected. So I think the question is, will there be any scalability concern on having a pod informer for each agent on the node? Does the SIG node have any suggestions on how to monitor this? Do you guys have any like common framework that we can leverage, or is this just it's okay that we just have each agent keep a pod informer?
Question. This is Derek. Appreciate you reaching out. I'm not as familiar with the implementation of this, I guess, but I guess the first question I would have is this informer listing and watching pods only bound to the node where that agent is running, or are you list watching all pods?
This will be the pods that are used by the node.
Is it, are the writes for this driver equivalent to, like, say what the node restriction admission plugin enforces?
That I'm not sure. That I have to. I'm not sure what is the permissions for that. So I need to check.
Maybe another way to think about that is the reason I ask is we did hit scale issues on the Cuba in the past that I'm sure Dawn can talk to around, like, the number of resources that are watched as the scale of the cluster grows. And we had done a number of work to kind of bound both the access rights of each kubelet to read that information, and then when and how it chooses to refresh that information. So you'll see code on the kubelet around, like, the secret manager and config map manager that, like, ensures it can only read the things associated with pods that are bound to that node. And then the identity of the kubelet is looked at when calling the API server to say, can I list pods, so that it only restricts you to be able to see the things that map that identity or that bounding node. So like the first, like, scale concern question would just be like ensuring, are you watching more than what is needed? And then there's probably like a secondary question on, like, how privileges are scoped to whatever monitoring solution this is that keeps it maybe as restricted as, say, the kubelet identity is restricted. But those are the first things that come to mind. I don't know, Dawn, if others come to your mind.
I think that's the top concern we have, and also we have another one. It is because each agent and then they have their own monitoring, and each of the monitoring without of well, basically it is take over. This is more to like a production. It's not open source concern. And for the production, if the GKE will deploy some agent and using a lot of customers' resource, I will make a big fuss on there. I said it's considered, right? So but on the open source, because on that particular things, because like, for example, open source have many, it is internal deployment. They want functionalities way more than the resource and the utilization performance. So that's why on the open source, I never raise that requirement. I just say, oh, please make sure you're not using too much resource. I just want to say that in the past, no matter is the CLI deployed and or like node problem detector deployed, and even like the said where in the past, the LinkedIn, they're using too much resources, I will basically just push back. I said, no, sorry. Even you maybe provide the good functionality, we need to redo a lot of work, make sure. So this is another concern. So I'm not sure because based on, I haven't looked at your CAP in detail, but that's the one of the another concern. But the scalability is the top concern for the functionality. Yeah.
Do you have any documentation on this, or like design docs?
We don't have those documentation, but I maybe dig into the really old of the node problem detector, and because when they first we've been raised those problems, because node problem detector actually have the both problem, and one is the scalability problem initially, and another one is just many times it's not the first time have the resource consumption issues, and the resource consumption. They had like the CPU, memory, and also even some disk I/O issue in the past gave us, and also scalability problem, and also so also does tech off the node because send too many information back to the API server and all those kind of things using all the. So we be but we don't have like one doc capture all of those things. I just have to dig into some old design doc and or maybe some old bug.
Okay.
Figure out those things. Yeah.
Okay. So there were some proposal for, I think it's between SIG Node and SIG instrumentation on how to monitor node components, right? Is that complete, or is it some? I just want to know if that's something that we can use as well. Are there any architecture there that we can leverage? This is maybe more about monitoring, like the metric side, I'm guessing, is seeking instrumentation, right? So do you have any, is that something that is in progress, or is this the design complete, or is...
That's a good question. Actually, if I remember correctly, that how to monitor node the component that's made a couple years ago by the Vishnu, and actually initially from the SIG Node, but do we want to partner with SIG instrumentation? If we are talking about the same proposal, then that's, I believe that's the Vishnu's make. That didn't. That's totally in the pause at this moment, and unfortunately, only internally we discuss, and he even didn't made it into the SIG Node to discuss that one. But I did talk to him about the internal. We did a review. I like the proposal, but just someone have to pick up that work and make progress on that one, and also need to came to the SIG Node and make progress here, got approval here.
Okay, so right now, basically the metrics are still or still in Kubernetes itself. It's not really separated out.
So yeah, but in some of the production I can share, not GKE. And some of production, what I understand, it is people build some plugin on the load problem detector, and node dedicated node problem detector to monitoring some of the per node daemon. So because the reason I know is because I made this suggestion also at the SIG Node, and also made it into the GKE, but we haven't made that progress yet. But I know someone approached me, say they already deploy those things, plug in their production. So that's why I know. So we can talk about more those kind of things. I did suggest them to upstream those things and the suggestions, but I haven't seen that at the signal here.
Just to maybe clarify my own understanding. So we have made progress within the SIG to distribute some sources of metrics that used to be coming from the kubelet to allow it to become from third-party sources. So GPU metrics would be a good example of something that, like, as a trend, we're trying to allow people to own their monitoring unique to their component and not have to go through the kubelet, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so just trying to understand, when I look roughly over the KEP you have here, it looks like you have new metrics you're wanting to emit. And is the question more aligned of, is that a good or a bad thing to do? I mean, I have no objection to that.
Yeah,
and
so,
then, so yeah, am I understanding the question appropriately?
yeah, so it's, yeah, so what we have there, the Walling House right now, it's not really metrics, because well, I guess it can be, but it's not implemented that way. So it's right now, it's just like events reported on the pod. So it's not really integrated with the metrics support. But if there is some common framework, maybe I think maybe we could look into that. So,
one thing I'd suggest, because I have not seen this KEP at all, is it probably would be worthwhile pinging SIG instrumentation for a review. I don't think they're listed as a participating.
I think we reviewed the original one, the alpha version, I believe. There was someone.
Yeah, the other thing that I would say is adding metrics, because all metrics start as alpha, doesn't require a KEP. So you can just go ahead, because they can be turned off now. So, or at least they can be mostly turned off now. I think harder turning off is coming in this release. So I would totally suggest that you sync up, get that feedback, but go ahead and run with that stuff. It's something that you can sort of experiment with because there's not necessarily great guarantees. So that's why we put in the sort of runtime backouts.
Okay. Yeah, another thing is we were also thinking in the future, some of this information maybe can be used for for us to do make some actions. Like if something happened, maybe controller will actually do something with those PVCs. So that probably we can't really depend on metrics, I'm thinking. So that's one reason that we may not go with the metrics route. Some of those metrics thinking maybe it's better to move to like a PVC status, but that's not, it's not in the KEP yet.
Yeah, so I guess there's no issue in other components reporting related events around a resource. The kubelet can talk about pods in an event resource, and the scheduler can, and that's all well and good. I do think there's an issue if you're trying to build systems with some guarantee that are looking to respond to events as like their messaging protocol.
No, not messaging. So I think if we are really want to react to those abnormal events, it actually has to be like a first class field. Can't be that.
Yeah, okay. I was just making sure that was
yeah, because we couldn't decide what to do with those events. So that's why right now they're just they're not first class field. With those information, if we know exactly what to do with them, then we can build those in PVC status or something. So that's still not decided. So at least those are not in the current KEP.
So this is why earlier I mentioned that Vishnu's proposal, how to managing the node component and the plus node problem detector. So actually that's can help you to figure out how to take action. So there's the transient abnormal state, right? So there also have a condition like a permanent of the problem. And so how you detect those kind of things and bump up to the upstream components and then take action. So this is how we are trying to deal with like the network issue in our production. So then we detect of the transient issue and also convert the transient issue into the permanent issue if it's persistent there for some duration. So the event is not reliable, and we are not. We basically from day one we introduce event. That's most for debuggability. It's not for system to rely on. It is take discovery and issue or recovery issue. So that's not the kind we are using. Just to share with you here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. And if you are interested more, and we can follow up on this one.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Okay, let's move to next topic. Peter and Robert, do you want to talk about seed advisor stats? Thanks.
Hey, thanks, Don. First time caller, long time listener. My name is Peter. I work for Red Hat, mostly working on Cryo. So for a bit of background, Cryo for the past, well, forever has been using C advisor stats in the kubelet because we found some initial regressions with performance when we switched to CRI stats. So we're finally in the works of actually making the full switch over and finding ways to make it more performant. I started off by making some changes in Cryo that I thought may help a little bit, but it didn't do quite as much as I wanted, and I'll have Robert describe it in a little bit. Some of the different, but basically we tested like 4 different versions, one with C advisor stats and Cryo, one with CRI stats with like an improved Cryo implementation. And then I found some indication that there was still work being done on the C advisor side, even though we were using CRI stats. So I have a WIP PR that I put up on the doc, and testing with that actually was much more promising. Robert, if you want to talk about different
sure.
Different ones.
I'm just going to go into a little background, what's motivating this from our end. I'm Robert Krowitz. I used to actually be working on. I used to actually be working on the Node team here, but I switched over to the performance team last year. One of the projects I'm working on involves using an alternative runtime that it's not appropriate to port. It's not appropriate to port C advisor to know how to talk to the other runtime. So that's sort of where I come in addition to being the performance team. I'm going to try to share. I'd like to be able to share a window here, please.
Yes, just 1 second. I realized that.
The other thing I want to just warn people in advance is possible I may have to jump off on no notice. Hopefully that won't happen.
So Robert, you got. You can.
Yes. Very good. Do people see people see this window here?
Yes.
Okay. This is a CPU utilization plot here by process. It's using a tool called pbench. I'm not going to go into more detail on it here, but suffice it to say that I've instrumented the worker node on which my test is running. My test involves creating 64 pods each with I don't know, was it maybe 2 million or no? It was 256K files per pod. So looking to see basic. Obviously, that means there's a lot of files that have to be statted in order to come up with a profile of resource consumption. So this graph here is the base case using C advisor stats and unpatched Cryo. The red here is the CPU utilization of the kubelet. As we can see, it's averaging well about 19% throughout. The first part of this on the left is when everything was being created. and then everything just idled for 20 minutes in steady state. Let's see, cryo here isn't actually, cryo here is less than 1% CPU utilization. So if there are no questions on that one, we'll move on to the second one, which was with cryo patched to cache the stats result. As we can see here, the kubelet actually consumed rather more CPU. It consumed about 25% of one core here. Cryo, in this case, consumed about 3% of a CPU, 3.5% of a CPU. So we're clearly seeing, Peter, I believe duplicated work would be a good way to describe this.
Yeah, so I mean here basically, and Robert will show the patch kubelet in a little bit, but here using CRI stats, like cAdvisor is doing some work that also cryo is doing, and the kubelet is basically asking cryo to do that work, like to give the results, and then also asking cAdvisor to get the results and resolving between the two, basically just choosing cAdvisor sometimes.
I neglected to mention initially, looking at the total average CPU consumption was perhaps 23% or thereabouts in the default case. In this case, it was using probably close to about 33-ish%. So somewhat more CPU utilization coming out of that. The next graph here is cryo with patches, and kubelet with patches do not call into the cAdvisor. In this case, we're seeing kubelet utilization fall to about 15%. Cryo is still somewhere in the range of 3%, but the total average CPU consumption now is only about 20% of one core. So this is a substantial improvement. And finally, the last one here, I'm going to have to ask Peter to explain it.
Yeah, so this one is without the cryo fixes, and the cryo fixes are basically just emulating what cAdvisor does with caching the disk stats results. So I ran it with just vanilla cryo, where it's actually walking the entire file system to calculate the for every CRI stat call. But I wanted to show kind of the difference between, but this has the kubelet patches that drop the cAdvisor calls, and I wanted to show like in isolation what dropping those calls does.
Okay, so here we're seeing kubelets taking about 20%, cryo's taking in this case about 2.5%, and we're total we're looking at maybe 24%. I'm going to compare this to the original, at least when my browser's willing to switch, where again we see it was in the same range, 20-something%. So that's the performance data I wanted to present here.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. So basically, the point of bringing this here is that I put up a PR, and so there's some duplicated work in the CRI stats path that I think should be optimized out, and I wanted to come here to see why we by default call into cAdvisor when we should be getting the one stat that I don't know if we can actually get from the CRI stats call. I haven't looked into it very hard, but are the process stats. That's one thing that I'm not totally sure if we get the process number from the CRI stats, but everything else seems like it's duplicated with the CRI stats, but we just default to using the cAdvisor version if it exists. And I'm wondering if there's a different approach, like dropping those calls, or like maybe changing the priority so that if the values exist in the CRI, we use those instead. So I just wanted to bring that up.
So let me just comment on that. The use case we envision here is for virtual machines running the containers. Running the containers inside, running the container inside a virtual machine. which is managed as a pod. So C-advisor on the host would not be able to extract meaningful data. All it would be able to extract data for would be the VM. So that's the other reason why we have to be able to go through the CRI here.
So there's from the C-advisor, it's just legacy reader. C-advisor is the initially. C-advisor start before Kubernetes, just want to share. And even before we have this, so then we have the C-advisor. Came from the same team and from the Borg team, Google Borg team. And so initially when we start, the monitoring is just like the whatever monitoring available, and we're just using C-advisor monitoring. But you can see that when we first start the container runtime interface, we talked with Docker team and Containerd community. So we basically want to using CRI stats. This is why from day one we did. But over time, so that's why we have like the stats related API. And but over time, there's the first thing initially. I think even like the CI alpha release and the monitoring, there are many debates. So it's not finalized. So we after like the alpha and the rollout, that's more finalized. And also second one is Containerd implementation. Even the API is finalized, implementation is not ready. So initially, so we punt on that one. Then later we have the cryo. So when we want to think about we can switch, we heard there's performance concern. So that's why we are kind of hold, because we want to both Containerd and cryo and get graduate from the incubator. So we delay that one. So after that, I keep heard like the cryo's performance have some performance concern. So that's why, and just recently I heard that problem is going to be fixed. So because just legacy reader, we do want to switch, but I believe Containerd will be behavior, like the using Containerd will be similar data here, but hopefully someone can perform like the similar performance analysis and generate the similar data here. So then we could basically switch, because we do have like the SIG Node. Basically, it's kind of like the endorse of the two container runtime, right? So we made a lot of decision for the both, and I want to make sure we also have the Containerd data here, and then we could say, okay, let's switch to the cryo stats. But
so, from my understanding, it seems that Containerd is using CRI stats now. Is that's correct?
Sergey, do you want to give the latest status on this one?
Sorry, I missed the question.
I was just checking that Containerd uses CRI stats instead of like the C-advisor stats.
Oh, yeah, this one. So we don't have any specific plans to transition there. I think David working on that, and we don't have any timelines for that. I think generally, like strategically, we may want to go there, but for now there is no actual plans.
So sorry, which one are you on currently?
Dave, do you want to say something?
Yeah. Sorry, just to add. So like for Containerd, it is using CRI stats, but like you've seen in the kubelet, like when you're getting the CRI stats, it's still fetching out the C-advisor stats. So
yeah, okay, cool.
The difference though with Containerd and cryo in terms of stats and stuff is I did notice that in kubelet there is a function called like using legacy C-advisor stats, and that's using for summary API. And for that, there's actually a specific check that's hard coded in kubelet, and it basically checks if you're using cryo. And I'm not sure on the whole background why that was put in, but there's basically if you're using cryo, then it will default to using C-advisor stats in addition to like for image stats as well. Yeah. Yeah.
So for clarity, on these tests we did remove that line. And that line was added because of these performance issues that we're now like rehashing and trying to, resolve. So we added that because we were concerned about the duplicated work, but didn't have the time to kind of fix it. But now we're, getting back to it. So part of this effort would also be removing that line and, from some point, once we've decided it's performance enough, actually using, CRI stats, the same as containerd.
Got it. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, a couple comments I wanted to make. I mean, first of all, really awesome. Thanks for doing this kind of performance analysis and getting all this data. One thing that might be additionally helpful is we can provide like a CPU profile of kubelet itself. That way we can see exactly which part of kubelet is taking up this extra CPU, and whether that's because for example, even with I saw the changes you made, I believe cAdvisor is still collecting the stats. So it'd be nice to understand and really pinpoint down, is it the additional, like when you're calling out to get the metrics, like that additional like fetching and merging of the cAdvisor and CRI stats, or is it like in the background, the fact that cAdvisor is still collecting the stats? And I think a CPU profile.
Yeah, I was also a little bit confused by that, but my thought that my guess, not really knowing, is like by kubelet never requesting for it, it's like, I don't know how cAdvisor decides to start looking at, a particular container or directory. But so like maybe by the kubelet not asking for it, cAdvisor just doesn't try, but I don't really understand the interaction right now. That's my one suspicion for how this, the stark difference in performance came up.
Yeah, my understanding it still will collect it, but maybe because it doesn't call out, there's some performance hit. Yeah, so that's why the benefit, like a CPU profile of kubelet itself, would I think really answer that question. We could see exactly which functions using the most amount of CPU, and this would help narrow down this investigation a lot, I think. So that might help.
So David,
go ahead.
Sorry, I just one comment. So David, can you do the similar experimental, or maybe work with Peter and Robert, do the similar experimental, so we can see that the containers stuff, so then we can make the decision, move forward. We do want to switch to using the CSI stats for a while, right? So always the concern, it is just uncertainty about the performance and the resource utilization, all those kind of things. So since CRI already take action, maybe we should also, otherwise we'll be blocked.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think it's you're referring to doing something similar on containerd side, right? That's kind of what you're referring to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense as well. I can start taking a look at that as well.
Yeah. We can share our setup and stuff, David, and we can sync on like also enabling the pprof profiles. So
that would be wonderful. Yeah. So then we can take one-time action, because right now we want to support both container runtime, because that's the signal endorsed and announced, right? So.
Yeah, definitely. I think that makes sense. And to do the same type of experiment on containerd side and make sure it works there as well. Cool.
Thanks. Thank you.
So one other quick question I just had is, another thing that we should investigate is on both of the CRI implementations, parts of the CRI stats that we may not be filling that motivated us to use cAdvisor to augment those stats. So something that I will personally look at. I mean, with this PR, it seems like nothing breaks horribly. So it doesn't seem like they're entirely needed, but it's something that I think we'll also need to think about if we're going to move away from having cAdvisor augment these stats when we're using CRI stats.
Cool.
Yeah. So again, putting on my hat for the other project here with having containers running in VMs, is that cAdvisor will be of no use for looking inside the VM, if I understand it correctly.
Yes, and yeah. So and also this effort, once we switch to the CSI stats, and this effort can help us to refactor of the cAdvisor and make sure cAdvisor can have like the library, like the core metrics or node metrics. the server has already been refactored a couple of times to satisfy Kubernetes needs in the past, but it's not done yet. In the CLI, we basically say we want to refactor it as, and make there's the only separate of the node related of the core metrics, and from the pod level metrics, and then give off all the container related metrics to the CSI. So then we can talk about more how to refactor that one, and then how to easy to link back to the Kubernetes, how to evolve CI/CD code base also. There's many things in the past and the people propose, but those effort is being paused. So now after this one switch, I think we can clean up a lot of code there.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, that's been a long effort. And I think, yeah, starting with like making sure we can fully rely on CRI stats on all the endpoints. That's definitely, I think, first step, and that we can think about doing that for sure.
And in that, after we have the refactory, Robert, then those libraries, some of the library, then you could using and then link against to monitoring within that VM. So then you have like the one pod or one couple container run off some like the VM, and then that could be linked, because this is the original idea what I proposed with the third container rental. Other side I forgot the name, but Lara finished that one. I also Lara graduated from the incubator. So that's basically what we want for the long time. Anyway, so that's we can discuss after that factory more.
All right, I'll stop sharing my screen then now.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Peter and Robert. Nice to see you two here again. And yeah, so let's move to next topic. Paco and Ximing, do you want to?
Hello. Sumia is not online, and only me. We are colleagues, and we work together for recently on SIG Node and fix some small bugs. And we want to move on to take more responsibility and some features, maybe some more tasks. But currently I only find several issues, and I listed it here, and some proposal, but I don't think I cannot decide which is better, or I wrote a KP for something, and the KP is in discussion, and I think we can discuss in the KP, and I think Sergey's suggestion is very good. I will move on to see some E2E test failures or some slow test cases, and also I will see the to-do issues in SIG Node. I have seen some of them already.
I can jump in a little bit on the state of issues, which is that we do not have them in a very well triaged state. And for the most part, I think people are focusing on the backlog of issues sort of based on, the kinds of bugs that they're seeing in production and using that to prioritize. We have, I think, over 500 open bugs right now in SIG Node or something around there. And so we need to go through and triage them. It's sort of on my long-term roadmap. Right now, I'm trying to focus on getting the PRs under control. And then as soon as we kind of got that in a good steady state, then I'm going to start tackling the issues. But I wanted to say just thanks so much for staying up so late. I think it's like not a great time for you right now. And it's nice to meet you. And
yeah.
They're great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Nice meeting you. And also, I just mentioned to you at the beginning for the first topic, I mentioned that you try to help fix that problem, and it's just maybe it is because too late for the release. So we decided not to take your fix, and instead we rewrote our original PR, and now we're looking into how to fix that problem. So just thank you for your attempt fixing the issue. And also there's some like the shared the doc, And in the SIG node, when it is actually shared, created by the menu and about like the kind of like the plan for Q1, right? So there's the something in that list and also don't have owner, and also some require of the more reviewer. Maybe you can start from there. And the last quarter actually also directly share the one doc. You can find that doc. And for the clean state, like we have many feature still is captured as the alpha or beta. We want to promote some from there, from the alpha to beta, beta to GA. So the some of those kind of things, and also no owner, and even there have the owner. Some of they don't have the reviewer. So you also can start from there and take a look, and maybe understand some like the PR, some like a feature why we decided not to promote or how we promote. So you can start from those, and maybe that's the easiest way for people to start looking into some work.
Oh, okay. I think a lot of work can be done later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, so we have last topic. I think is talk about Sarah, do you want to talk?
Yeah, thank you, Don. Like, so we discussed about this previously as well, like the adding a flag in kubelet to disable the pprof, and that's the issue that we created. But I was wondering, like, the issue talks about adding one flag to control both the endpoints, the pprof as well as the flags. I was wondering, like, if we should probably add additional or another configuration for the flags separately and don't combine it with the profiling flag. So I added a comment in that GitHub issue as well, asking like if we should have two separate flags instead of one controlling both pprof as well as the debug flag. So I was wondering, like, if you have any suggestions.
I need to refresh my memory about this one.
Yeah, so this was basically like for AWS specifically, like we have a Fargate instance where we manage the kubelet tasks on the on our images, and we don't want our customers to go directly invoke the pprof as well as the set the debug flags. So that's why like we kind of created this issue long time back, and then what we from our initial meeting, what we decided was like we initially kept these ones open for debugging purposes, and it's okay to add a flag to disable these endpoints. And one of our community member, they were also working on the PR, but they added one flag to control both the endpoints. So I wasn't sure if that's the right move. So wanted to see if we should have separate flags.
And just a quick question. I remember there's a flag that turns on both the pprof endpoints. Is there any reason you need to turn on one versus the other, or what's kind of the rationale?
No, that doesn't matter. Just one flag also should be enough to just turn it off.
Got it. And that's the current state, right? I believe last time I checked, it was one flag. Right?
Oh, we don't. Currently, we don't have a flag though. It's just in PR.
Okay. Huh. I remember when I was messing around with pprof, I'd enable something, but yeah.
So we added one recently for logs specifically, and for pprof it was just in PR state, which I was helping them to drive the fix now.
Got it. I remember some like enable debugging handlers or something, but I would have to check. Maybe I'm confusing with something else.
Yeah, I remember recently there are some change about that, so but I forgot the detail. Those things.
Like enable system log handler is something that we added recently.
Yeah, just check. There's a enable debug handle, enable debugging handlers, but it's a kubelet flag though. But
right. Yeah. So enable debugging handler, like that kind of takes care of like most of the endpoints that kubelet serves, and this specific issue just for turning off the pprof and then the flags endpoint. So maybe Don, I can also follow with you offline as well.
Sure.
Get some thought and then see where we wanted to go with this.
Sure. Anyway, even we follow up, we will share back to the SIG Node. So let's follow up after this one. Then we share back to the SIG Node after that. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all for today. Any other topic people want to raise? And then otherwise we just call off for today. And very nice to see everyone here. Okay, thanks everyone, and talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.